Okay, we are live. Hey, hey, how you
Hey,
doing,
good
Bashak?
morning. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really, really happy to be here with you, and thank you so much for jumping on this call with me, this live with me. I'm really looking forward to racking your brains a little bit about
My
what it's like
pleasure.
to
My
be,
best.
yeah, about what it's like to be an entrepreneurial mom and how that's been for you throughout your career and the challenges and the beautiful moments and the goals you've had so that we can, yeah, so that we can inspire other people who might be in the same boat. And I can also collect some important info.
Okay,
All right.
let's go.
So, would you, for anybody that doesn't know, I just want to say, hi, I'm Amy. I am currently on a mission to help entrepreneurial mothers to remain the powerhouse entrepreneurs that they are without sacrificing themselves or their family. And this is really where I'm focusing my attention, my work, and it's really powerful. And Bashak, I'd love for you to share a little bit about you before we begin as well.
Yeah, sure. So I am a mother of two, although my children are now 25 and 28. And I started work in investment banking, then moved to in-house. That means working for a company, but again in finance, because it is more of a family-friendly environment.
Hmm.
And in 2019, I retired from finance altogether and set up a little interior design business by going back and training for it, which I still do actually. So
Amazing.
that's, yeah.
Amazing. Love it. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you a few questions regarding this journey
Mhm.
and then just feel free to answer with whatever feels most natural and authentic to you. All
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so question number one that I have for you is, what did you struggle with the most when it came to balancing out motherhood, time for yourself, and working in the corporate space? And if you see me typing, I'm just going to be taking some notes as well.
Yeah, go for it. The challenges. Okay, well, um, basically time and headspace. And I would open up that having time for yourself a little bit more because it's also finding time for your relationship.
Hmm.
Because I was very much focused on work. It wasn't really a choice for me. I come from a background where our family struggled financially, so I started work when I was 15
Hmm.
and did not stop. Haven't stopped yet. And so that was a given for me in my head. And children were also a given for me, although I did try to stop at one because one was really difficult enough with a big job.
Mm.
Um, and my ex-husband was very, very, very keen for a second. So we've had two, which, I adore them both. And I now don't wish that I had done it any differently, but it was harder with two kids rather than one. Um,
Mhm.
and the other thing is, finding time for your own well-being and finding time for your partner, because
Mhm.
those are the things that I certainly put in the back burner a little bit. And, lo and behold, I'm now divorced. I don't know if that would have happened any differently, but, there's not a way of doing a controlled experiment on these things.
Mm. Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really powerful. And feel free to not answer this, but if you feel happy to, do you feel like I know you kind of just answered this question, but do you feel like the divorce were was partly due to you struggling to find this time to give to the relationship, to yourself, to your kids, to the business, to everything together?
Um, yeah, Yes. I mean, look, your happiness is something that comes together and has parts. I wouldn't say they're discrete parts. They're kind of all connected parts, but they are
Yeah.
parts.
Mm-hmm.
And your relationship with your partner is one of those parts that needs time and effort. I mean, when you're when you're young and you're in the first, I don't know, 5, 7 years of your marriage or your relationship, you think that it's solid and it's going to go on like that forever, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. It really, any relationship requires time and effort,
Mm-hmm.
and so does a marriage. And if you don't put that time and effort into it, then it is more likely that you're going to grow differently, grow apart as the years go. So I was married for 23 years, so it's not something I looked down upon, and it was a
Yeah.
good marriage. But because I believe that relationships need work, um, then I certainly the reason I didn't put that work in wasn't because I didn't wish to, but because
Right.
I didn't have the time and the headspace and the
Yeah.
energy to do it.
Yeah. Just on that last point, how did you feel like your energy was drained a lot of the time? And if so, were you trying to do anything to bring it back on track?
Yeah, no, that was one of my mistakes. I didn't. So I made a lot of time for the children. They were a priority. And then I made time for my work, which was, in investment banking and finance. It was a lot. These companies don't really understand what goes on in your personal life.
Yeah.
They expect that you're on 100% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
switched on. And I didn't make time for myself. I mean, one example is I had these awful headaches. I would get awful, excruciating headaches. And I would think, is this a migraine? Is this, is there something wrong with me? But believe it or not, despite suffering from them, I didn't get to the bottom of it and solve it. And it was only after I left work that my headaches have gone away, and I've actually found out that they were just tension headaches from being like this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it for a long time, partly because I was working over my computer and partly because I was just tense. That they would, I would get muscle spasms in my shoulders, and then they would go into the
Mm-hmm.
nerves that come onto your face, and I would have these awful headaches on the front of my face. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually didn't make the effort to get to the bottom of that, and suffered from it
Mm-hmm.
for a long time.
Right. And
Yeah,
so do you think the reason why you didn't get to the bottom of it was because your children and work were top priority and you just didn't have any other space to just, or time or energy to just
correct.
do
It's all a
anything?
matter of prioritizing. It
Yeah.
really is. And um, you know, no one, maybe this would have been something for my mother to do, for someone to say, hey, you need a toolbox, you need some way of journaling or something that will give you those tools to look at your priorities every so
Yeah.
often. Um, that didn't happen for me. So I
Mm.
kind of struggled in my own way, the best way that I could.
All right.
Mm.
Yeah, I get that. That's that's challenging, and this is what I see happen with so many women who are
Yeah.
either running their own businesses or working super intense jobs, not knowing how to find that balance. So my next question would be, now that you're running your own business, what is the difference, and if any, and between essentially working a corporate job and running your own business? Are you managing time better? Do you still feel that there's a pull in different directions? And maybe if your kids were younger, would you still feel that it might be more similar to how it used to be?
Oh, yes. Okay. Look, I don't deny for a second that doing a creative doing creative work such as interior design when I already have a much stronger financial position is a privilege. I graduated in 2019 from interior design school with a lot of younger people, and I don't envy their position, really. They're trying to build businesses, they're trying to buy homes, they're trying to pay mortgages with the work they're doing, and I'm not. I'm just enjoying myself, which is a privileged position to be in. So I think it is hard for people. In some ways, even harder. So if we compare a corporate job to entrepreneurship, then in the corporate job, there's a lot of pressure from outside. People demand things of you, and you're trying to cope with that demand. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, the demands are coming from inside. Those are maybe even more difficult to push away, right? Something in your head is constantly saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do it well, you've got to do this, you have to be a star, you have to be the best. And if you're in that cycle, then it must be very, very difficult.
So would you say that now that you're in this position, you're not feeling, is there any particular challenge that is present, even though, that you're still a mother and an entrepreneur at the same time?
My life is very, very different. So at the same time, so in the same sort of 2 to 3 years, my children became completely independent. I got a divorce, didn't have to run a big house with all its needs. And I left my corporate job as well. So now I'm in a very, very different position where I do as much or as little interior design work as I wish, only work for people through word of mouth. Don't push myself too hard. If I can, sometimes I fall into that trap. But I don't push myself too hard. And I make a lot of time for myself. And I also feel that the experiences that I should have had as a young person, which I missed out on, I'm trying to fulfill those now. I mean, you'll see me dancing. You've seen me dancing in a rave. And I do that. I think it's partly because something inside me says, if I'm 80 and sitting in a chair and thinking, because of, then I think it's going to be a pretty bitter end. So I try to fill those holes that I missed out on.
All right, that's so powerful. Love it. I love that. So, okay, so let's go back to that time where you were struggling to balance everything out. What is one thing that you would often feel but never really said out loud?
Help, I think. My situation was exacerbated by the fact that I'm Turkish. I moved here for work. I got married here to a Canadian man, and that meant that I didn't have my family here. Neither did my ex-husband. So I didn't have a sister to call on. I didn't have a mother to call on, and I wish that could happen, because I'll now sort of tie that back to my own well-being. It's, if you're earning well, if you're a double income family earning pretty well in London, then you have access to help in the shape of a nanny or two or five, whatever. People have, a lot of help at home. But firstly, I was adamant that I would be close to my children.
Yeah.
But also, where was I going with this?
Help.
Oh, yeah. Also, when you do have a nanny, it's work for them. So they will come at a certain time, they'll leave at a certain time, they'll do a certain job. And I've had very good nannies. I'm not saying otherwise at all. But being able to call on a mother or a sister or a really good girlfriend to come by is much more spontaneous and much more need-based. Right? So even if my nanny has worked from 9 till 6 and she's done, what she needed to do and she leaves, and then, that night I'm just feeling really low, or the baby's really just crying too much, or not getting to sleep, or my husband's away traveling and I just need someone to chat to and have a glass of wine, you call on someone. I didn't have that. So that probably made my particular situation a little bit harder.
And would you say the help that you would ideally have wanted would have been from other women?
Yeah.
Okay, that's powerful. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to ask you on that.
And if I don't answer any of your questions because I've gone on a tangent, just go back and ask me.
Yeah, no worries. This is great. I'm actually picking up other stuff, so it's awesome. It's perfect. So is there anything else that you were silently dealing with at the time and weren't expressing?
I think I struggled with the idea of being Superwoman. That concept, I think, is my generation's concept, and it's continuing for young women these days. I don't know if it's to a slightly lesser extent, because young women these days are a lot more aware, a lot more awake, and they have more examples ahead of them to learn from, and I hope they are. And you're contributing to that effort, which is really great to see. My generation grew up being told we're superwomen. Women can do anything. Women can work, they can be the best at work, and women can raise children, and women can be, great lovers at the same time, and great girlfriends, and you can do all of it, and it's fine. Well, most of the time you can, but some of the time it's a struggle. And if that's in your head, that pressure that you can do it, then that is unfortunately really not very good pressure. I mean, people used to live in smaller communities and they had a lot more support, both, physical support and emotional support. Whereas we now live in much more nuclear families, and that sort of physical and emotional support really doesn't exist. So, the pressure to be that superwoman that can do everything and do them the best that they can. If you take it to an extreme, better than any man, then that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, especially alone, like without that community support, without,
Definitely.
We've discussed this, like in indigenous tribes, you have the women who, they live in community, right? And they all support each other. And you have the elders that support the younger generation, and then the mothers support the kids, and they're all working together to support the entire community. And like we live in these isolated bubbles where like no one's helping each other, and it's, you have to, the only help you can get is a paid nanny, and like maybe you have a sister, maybe you don't, but like it's crazy. It's a totally different world how it should be, right?
It unfortunately it really is, and it's one of the really biggest disadvantages of living in this time that we've come to that. I mean, we don't even have any like community rights, or I'm not a religious person, and in a way, religion has been misused, and it's, you can say it's a good thing that people aren't as religious anymore, but religion gave people some purpose. Religion gave people a church to go to where they met people, or any other place of worship where you met people and met with neighbors and friends and relatives, and that's all gone away as well. As I say, I mean, even girlfriends. I have very, very close girlfriends, love them to bits, and they, I'd like to think they love me too back. But we've sort of moved away from this sort of natural sort of way of being together. It's always, text before you call before you stop by. It didn't used to be that way. People just stopped by. It was like a gift from a friend for someone to knock on your door and come in and have a coffee, change your state of mind, and leave you happy. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And do you feel like if you had that support at the time, it would have been possible to be a superwoman? If you had the support of the other women and the emotional support, the physical support, it would have been possible to be like ace in all areas at, to your standard, ace in all areas, or do you still think like that's just not possible? I don't think.
No, that probably is much more possible, because look, when we say I had no time for myself, that absolutely, isn't every single day, every single hour. It's just there are bottlenecks in your life that become really quite difficult to deal with. But your bottlenecks will not be at the same time as your, let's call it, support networks bottlenecks. So in a way, if you are sharing resources together, then you're, when you're at a bottleneck, then someone else in your support group will have the bandwidth to step in. So if you can share life that way, it's bound to be easier.
Thank you. That's super, super powerful and insightful. Thank you for sharing that.
And it's not just about, time and effort and somebody coming in and, cooking for you or taking the kids to school. Those are more sort of physical things that you can probably cope with. It's even the fact that if you're not feeling great, then somebody stops by and they either cheer you up, make you laugh, or give you some common sense that you didn't think about, some advice that you appreciate, and it sort of takes you from that difficult place and puts you on track again.
Yeah.
That's really, really valuable, I think.
Yeah. And we're supposed to do that all on our own now. Be in a certain state and get ourselves out of a certain state without community. And that's it's wild because we support each other so much. Sometimes you just need that pattern disruptor. Like someone comes in and says they're like, "Hey, like you're being ridiculous," and you're like, "Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I am." And you're like, it just changes everything. So I totally feel, and you still feel that to be present now, right? Like as much as you did then, or more so now?
Sorry, feel what exactly?
The lack of community.
Oh, well, I now have I have 3 volunteering positions, which each of which gives me a community, which is very nice. And I'm also able to reach out to my friends. But the way I look at the social fabric, it's worse than ever. Yeah, I'm just lucky that I now have more time and more wisdom maybe to seek out community, and that's great. But I find the rest of society is probably going, unfortunately, in the wrong direction.
Agreed. Okay, I have another question for you. So, other than the belief of needing to be superwoman, what other beliefs were running the show back in the day and keeping you in this overwhelmed state?
Okay, these might be Yeah, they're a little specific to me.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll start with one that might resonate with people. Sort of the idea that women are as smart as men, that we can be as successful as men, make as much money and have as much fame as men, I think is one. The other one,
Can you expand on that one a little bit?
yes, I think in my generation was probably going into professions that were mostly male dominated. Law and finance. Still, when I would look at a trading floor when I first started investment banking, it would be 80% male. And I have been told there was one colleague, a very nice gentleman, but he said to me, "Your husband is an investment banker. He must be making enough money. What are you doing here?" As simple as that. So to then be in that environment and to prove that you're as good as them, if not better, is something that drove me. The other one, which is now specific to me, is financial security. I grew up in a family that struggled financially, so I think I may have said I started working when I was 15.
Yeah.
And I haven't stopped. And that drove me as well, that I never wanted to be, well, that's probably not true. I never wanted to struggle. It didn't drive me to make more and more and more and more. That happens to people too, unfortunately. But I didn't want to. I wanted to be able to provide for the children, whether my husband was present or not.
Yeah.
That was driving me.
So the belief there was what?
The belief was to be good enough at work to be able to be financially independent.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we have needing to be superwoman in all areas. The idea that, women can achieve as much as men was what was driving you as well. Is that something you still believe?
That women can be? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Very much so.
Okay. And then I need to be good enough at work to be financially independent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what if we go a little bit deeper into like the emotions that we're actually driving, what do you think were the deeper emotions that were driving these beliefs and these behaviors? I can help you dissect it deeper if you need, but you might already know.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, if I go really, really deep, it's I grew up in the east of Turkey where, it was a very patriarchal society. And, in those 10 years, first 10 years of my life, women covered their hair. In fact, when we lived in that town. And I was stopped by a man once. I must have been 9 or 10. He stopped me and said, "Oh, whose daughter are you?" And I told him. And he said, "Oh, I need to tell your dad to make sure your arms are covered." And I was like 9, 10 years old. So that's, being told what to do by men just because they were men. I mean, I'm okay being told what to do by other people who are probably, in some way superior than me. I take that, gladly. But to be told just because I'm a woman, they're a man,
Yeah.
is something that leaves you with an inherent sort of, I don't need them to tell me what to do. I can do it. And yeah, financial security, I think it's fear. I mean, when in a household where there are times when you can't pay the rent or the school fees, and you get called to the headmistress's office and they say, can you please tell your mum, dad, fees are still not paid. You just don't want to be in that situation again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, that's really great. So would you
safe? I think that's the bottom line. Safety is the well, probably the most inherent need that any human being needs. More more so for children, and still the same for adults. So if you feel unsafe as a woman, either because of your standing in society or the workplace or financial security, then that is something you want to fight against.
So would you say, so I think what I'm picking up is the two core emotions would be maybe fear and anger or resentment
Um,
towards like in this experience of the story you gave me. Maybe it was like, how dare you tell me what to do, or frustration maybe.
yeah, frustration maybe. And if you look at it on a good day, then desire to do something so I'm not in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really powerful. Okay, so let me skip that question. We'll go to this one. So what do you feel is the biggest trade-off you've made between your success and your well-being or relationships?
Yeah, so going back, nobody wishes that their marriage ends.
Mm-hmm.
I am very happy now, don't take me wrong.
Yeah.
But that's probably one trade-off.
Yeah.
The other trade-off is well-being. I think my headspace was just too busy, and physically I didn't look after myself as much as I do now. I was, hardly ever calm and collected. It was always busy, 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 if not physically, then mentally. One thing that I don't see as a trade-off, which may come to many as a surprise, is the well-being of my children. A lot of people feel a lot of guilt that when they work, that the children suffer. I never had that. And many people did. I met plenty of school mums who either left work or were constantly worried about, being a bad parent, being a bad mother, because they were going off to work. I never felt that. I was very close to my children when I was with them. I was very much aware that, what they needed wasn't a lot of time together, but a lot of quality time together. And I did give them that. Was always very close with them. And in fact, if you take it to the other sort of this idea further, I think my children are the emotionally balanced, independent people that they are because I did allow them to be that. I didn't mollycoddle them. And I'd be shocked when I got emails from the other parents in the school saying, my son lost one shoe. I was like, my children never lost anything. They learned to take responsibility of their things and themselves from a really young age. And they still are very, independent and emotionally balanced and really good citizens. But that wasn't because I spent, 100 hours with them every day,
Right.
because, I gave them a lot of love and compassion and understanding, but also their own sort of tools to grow.
Love that. The quality over quantity. I love that. That's so powerful. That's awesome. That's amazing. So, okay.
And
So,
yeah,
yeah, go on. Go for it.
I was going to say there is even a bad dynamic here where some mothers, who have left a big job to look after their children, will almost explicitly not let their children grow up fast enough. That means they lose their purpose.
Right.
And I can give you examples. Like, I went to register my children at a new dentist. I'll make this really quick. And they asked for their details, and I gave them their details and their phone number. I gave them the phone number, and then I moved to the other child, all the details and phone number. And the receptionist said, "Oh, this is this is a different phone number." And I said, "Yeah, because it belongs to my son." She said, No. She said, "We need your phone number as a contact." And I said, "They're 14 and 16. Why?" And she said, "Because then we can organize their appointments with you." And then I literally said, if they can organize a birthday party on Facebook, they can organize their own.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point, like, wow, so interesting, mothers that leave their work, find their purpose, or they attach their purpose to their children and they don't let them grow up. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that pattern. I've seen that pattern. Yeah, that's so interesting that you've noticed that. Have you noticed that a lot? Have you noticed that as something to be very, very common and prominent in
Yeah.
mothers who leave the workspace?
Yeah. Definitely.
Interesting. All right, that's cool. Okay, so one thing I want to ask you is, I just want to dive just a little bit deeper before we enter like the final couple of questions. Is you said that your well-being was one of the trade-offs,
Yeah.
and that your headspace was too busy, and physically as well, either your mind or you were busy physically, or your mind was busy, and you did not look after yourself, and you were not calm and collected. Can you dive a bit deeper into what you mean by, like, you weren't calm and collected? How did that manifest? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I had a very busy and active mind all the time, thinking either about what had happened in the past and how I could maybe do it differently, or what will happen in the future and how I can plan for it. To the extent that I would even think about potential mishaps or errors that could happen, risks that were tiny, that if they happened, then what I could do to remedy those. So when your brain is always busy with what happened in the past and what might happen in the future, then you know what I'm going to say, you don't live in the present. So that's what was happening to me. I wasn't really, enjoying life and moments as much as I should, making time to enjoy those moments as much as.
So do you feel like you were just surviving more than living at that time?
I don't know. Maybe surviving is maybe too well. Yeah, I hope it's too strong a word,
Yeah.
but it's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, surviving in the sense that obviously you know how the nervous system operates, right? We're either in that parasympathetic calm state or in that sympathetic stress state.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm guessing here you were in that sympathetic stress state most of the time, hence constantly thinking about the past, the future, not living in the present. And did that ever manifest as, you know, when we look at like emotional, you know, maybe like screaming at your kids or maybe sleep disruptions, or how did that manifest in the body and with your family and with your partner at the time
Yeah.
and with yourself?
Mm. No, I really didn't reflect it to the kids. They were my priority. I always
Yeah.
had that front mind that, you know, they weren't the reason for any of this and they didn't deserve any worse. But the headaches I talked about were
Yeah.
definitely a manifestation of that because, you know, you need to, you know, the body is not relaxed. The body is at this sort of heightened stage of stress. So I was getting those, you know, um, terrible
Tension
headaches.
headache. Yeah.
Yeah, tension headaches. Um, how else? Yeah, and I think the other element is probably because you're so busy in your head, then you don't make time for more joy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of joy to be had just from, you know, going for a walk, looking at the flowers coming out in spring.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you don't allow yourself that opportunity, then yeah, it's a real shame. That's a
Yeah.
manifestation of being busy.
And did you ever or did you often experience any anxiety or sleep problems?
I did not. I think I'm probably built of really strong stuff from childhood. I
Yeah.
would say. So I didn't. Yeah. In fact, the more stressful a situation gets, the calmer I look on the outside.
Powerful.
Which is probably just some defense mechanism I developed
Mm,
to cope with difficult situations, which I had a lot of when I was younger.
mhm.
Um, so I'm calm on the outside, but on the inside, I'm just sort of tense being
Yeah.
who I was, I'd like to think.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much for answering in such detail. Great. So, okay, let me see. Let me see. Okay. So, what's one thing you wish someone could have just handed you, emotionally, energetically, or physically, that would have made everything feel easier at that time? Just one thing, your top thing.
Um, Something like a kirtan. It's
Hmm.
very specific. So I'm into make. So I think if somebody had said to me, "You need to meditate more," I mean, people have said to me. I mean, it's the oldest, you know, relaxation technique
Mhm.
in the world. I couldn't have done. It was just too much. It was too difficult to stop my monkey mind.
Yeah.
But if someone had introduced me to something like kirtan, something in community, something that
Mm.
I could flow with, it would have done me some good.
Super powerful. Thank you. And if there was one aspect of your life that you feel that you would have prioritized to transform at that time, whether it be health, relationships, intimate relationship, business, what would that have been for you? That one area that you would have been like, you know, if someone can just hold my hand right now and help me transform this aspect of my life, that would be amazing.
Um, Probably more joyful moments with my ex-husband
Mhm.
because I think, you know, when you're in the situation that we've been describing, then even going out on a date can turn into talking about, the latest parent-teacher meeting for your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And okay, just before we end, my final question would be, what would have been or is now your goal when it comes to, we can do both at the time and now. What would have been your goal and is your goal now in term when it comes to merging all of these different aspects of your life together? Does that make sense? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, what it is now is probably clearer. What it would have been?
Yeah, like when back in the day, what would have been at that time your goal regarding like balancing all of these areas out? Would it have been more peace in all of these areas? Would it have been experiencing less stress and the ability to handle your emotions better? Maybe a combination. What would
Uh,
have been that like those goals at the time to help you? Let's say that dream life, what would that have entailed at the time for you? And now, what would that look like?
okay. Dream life then. Well, I think you've in a way in your question you've said it. I think dream life then would have been just experiencing more joy, experiencing more relaxed moments, feeling more safe, so that I didn't have the pressure to be acting the way I was acting. Dream life for me is a little bit different. And that is, it's mostly about filling my bucket, which I felt in the last, coming out of my relationship and the children becoming independent and everything, feeling like I had my bucket too full in some areas, i.e., success and social standing, etc. And my buckets for fun and experiences and living life to the full and being content and making sure I'm not regretting how I lived my life when I'm 80 and sitting in an armchair. That's now my goal.
Do you feel like the goal you had at the time has now been achieved, given where you are now?
Yes, I mean, I've talked about, the topic of conversation here is difficulties because we're trying to get to the bottom of how to do life better. But I don't, I think I am going to be that 80-year-old woman who thinks I've lived a good life.
Yes. I love it. Amazing, amazing. So just to recap that at the time the dream life would have been experiencing more joy, more relaxation, feeling safer
Yeah.
in yourself, so you didn't feel that pressure to constantly be on and doing and pushing.
Yeah.
Would there be anything else you'd add to that, maybe around your health, your family life, your personal life, intimacy, anything like this that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I could have certainly done more physical exercise. I made sure I went to Pilates once a week all my life, which has been a good thing. But
Yeah.
I could have, continued with tennis, for example, which I dropped, which would have been a fun and physical thing to do, which I didn't. So more physical exercise.
Within that dream life at the time, it would be to do
Yeah,
more physical exercise. Yeah.
yes, it would have been good. And being part of more like-minded communities.
Yeah.
That would have been very helpful, and I would have been a happier person, I think, if one way or the other, either through, I don't know, an art community or a singing community or a choir or,
Yeah.
something like that, or one of the communities that related to what I do as voluntary work now, to have like-minded people around me who are supportive.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, thank you so much for all of these amazing answers and for sharing your story with me and with us and with the people listening and the people who tuned in throughout this hour. I would love to invite you to a masterclass I'm doing at the end of the month. It's a free masterclass. I'm calling it a party, the Breakthrough Party.
Oh,
And it's an online 2-hour virtual event
yeah.
where we're basically going to be going through, the different ways to enhance one's life as a mother and an entrepreneur, and how we can start to master these different aspects of our lives to not enter these states that you mentioned you used
Yeah.
to experience, but also to experience more aliveness and joy and community nowadays as well. So I would
Okay.
love to invite you. I will send you the link
Yeah,
if you
if
want to
I'm
join
here,
us.
I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, and if anybody who is listening now or will listen later wants to join as well, just make sure to get in touch on a social platform. Just comment below the word me, M-E, and I will send you the link personally to join. And yeah, Bashak, thank you so much. Thank you
You're
so, so
very,
much
very
for this.
welcome. It was a pleasure.
This has been great. This has been amazing. So
Uh,
have a beautiful, beautiful day and week ahead. And thank you for being with us.
and everyone who's listening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.